Well, guys, here's the 2000, is this a 5 or a 6? I'm not really sure. I don't know my Dodges like some of you guys probably know them. Let's see here. This is a, oh, it's an 04. I was wrong on both accounts. So I come in here yesterday morning and started working on this thing and started disassembling the front clip and stuff here so I could pull the engine out of it. It's Sunday afternoon. I'm just bored. I've sat in the house most of the day. I went out today, had a pretty good experience there with, like I was telling you on the previous video, I've had a pretty good experience with most of these guys I've met off YouTube. Most of these guys are pretty damn good people. Man named Kevin Kosman over in Eagle Point, Medford area. He came over today. Me and him went and looked at a, he works for a big helicopter logging outfit full time as an engineer, and then on the weekends he helps farm too. And pretty soon he's going to have to, what it sounds like, he's going to have to take over the farm because the gentleman that does it's 86 years old, and he ain't going to be able to do it here pretty soon. So he's probably going to run into that full time. But he was looking at a 1095 New Holland bell wagon over here that was for sale, and he came over and we went and looked at it, and we decided not to go for it. It wasn't very good shape. So anyway, hell of a nice guy, good guy. You know, another good contact to have over in that area. Anyway, Doug out of the one that paid for the video software. I mean, I'm gonna have to stay in touch with him. He seems like a really good guy too. So, anyways, to reiterate on the previous video that I shouldn't focus on the negative. There's a lot of good people like that really outweigh the negative. So anyway, back to the Cummins. On the Cummy here, I got underneath it yesterday and I was unhooking stuff, and I noticed that on this side of the block, remember the original hole? Well, I don't know, I have to go get my flashlight. There's a piece of piston that's jammed in the hole right there. Let me wake the camera up. Yeah, you can't see it, too dark, but there's a hole over here too, and that's exactly what I expected happened on this engine. Is a rod broke is what happened. What happens is the rod will broke 2 or 3 inches above the crank journal, and then that rod just sits there and does that and windmills. And then what happens when it windmills around, the piston falls down on the bottom, and then the rod just keeps hitting it and knocking chunks off of it and knocks them through the hole. And when it disintegrated the piston, finally, part of it shot up through the valve and came out into the turbo. And so, more than likely, the crank's probably going to be okay. Maybe. Most of the time, I had a C15 Cat one time that we did this to, and we put some Pittsburgh Power products into it and made it run. And those guys that I do that kind of work with, I don't do it much anymore because of California. We don't hot rod trucks anymore because you can't with the emissions criteria that it's in California. Anyways, but that one we did, we put some pretty hot rod parts. We put some marine injectors in it and different cam, and we did all kinds of different stuff. She ran pretty good, and anyways, it lasted a couple years, but it broke a rod eventually, and it's a cat block, pretty heavy block, and it windmilled in there like that, but it didn't window the block. It knocked the piss out of it pretty good, and we tore it all back down. And I told him, I said, well, when you knew right out of the gate, when you want more power, that is the price you pay. So when you want something hot rodded, expect eventually something's going to give out on you. But this one wasn't hot. I don't know. I think it has a power programmer in it. I didn't really look, but there's a huge performance transmission pan on it, and I don't know if they've hot rodded it up a little bit or what. But we're gonna get her torn out of there, get the pan off of it, and see what we get into. Anyways, that's what we're up to. Alright guys, as I'm disassembling this, I gotta tell you a little bit about what's been going on, kind of what happened today.
It was kind of an interesting day. The first thing that happened, so I started on this thing early this morning, pulling the engine. It's actually what you're seeing now is after I got back home after my service calls. Um, so I I pulled this engine out, and I've got a 6-liter powerstroke. I'll tell you a little bit about that later too, as the story progresses. But I had a 6-liter powerstroke at one ranch that I tore apart the other day. Uh, we still needed to do well. We had to get a few more parts, so I had to go back to it. But I had a kind of a mayday call early this morning, while I was pulling this engine out. About a 7810 that the exhaust and everything had come apart on it, kind of up under the. If you guys have worked on those 7810s, the exhaust comes off the muffler and then kind of goes up underneath the front of the cab and then comes out to the stack. Well, they couldn't get it off up underneath the cab there, so I had to go out there. Well, anyway, the little town that I have to go through, I was kind of raised in that area, and there's a guy there that lives out of town there, and he's a little bit dingy in the head sometimes. He's got when I was a kid, there's a road where you come past the mill and then it tees. One part of the road comes from Highway 97 that's dirt, and then it comes onto the main road. Well, the main road is the paved road that comes from the mill, and it makes a 90-degree turn back towards the south. Well, the dirt road comes in from the north and tees in to the paved road. Well, there was a stop sign on the road coming from the highway, which was not a main, wasn't the main road. It was going onto the main road. So there was a stop sign there. There was never a stop sign on the paved road. It was just a corner. So this guy moved in there, and he had a hard on for people going around that corner. And so he decided to put his own stop sign there. And anyways, he put his own stop sign there, and it's been an ongoing saga for the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years. The kids go by there and knock his stop sign down and paint over whatever. So I was going through there. So anyways, I was going through there, and between the mill and the stop sign, which is probably about maybe 3/8, quarter of a mile, halfway in between there, somebody had stuck another sign there and painted it green, as in go, and put in white letters on there, go ahead. And I got to giggling there, and then I got down to the stop sign that he added. But see, what was kind of funny about it, over the years, the kids have knocked it down, and, because there's not supposed to be a stop sign there. That's a through road. And so anyways, uh, somebody had went on down to the next sign that he had added in there and then painted it green and put go ahead on there. So anyways, I thought it was kind of funny, and over the years here, this guy, he's had it knocked down so many times that he had like a 4x4 with treated 4x4 that he had put his own round stop sign in there, and they had knocked it down several times or whatever, or it fell over. I don't know what happened, but this has been an ongoing thing for quite some time now, and I've talked to him, the guy, a few times, and he thinks the world's ending because somebody didn't stop there, which nobody ever had to stop there. It never was a stop sign there to begin with. Anyway, he decided that the last time it got knocked over, he took like a 10-inch piece of well casing, and he took a post and he stuck it down in the middle of there and filled concrete around the center of it, around the post, and then took the backhoe and the sign and set it on the corner. So yeah, it was kind of quite comical. So that story I'll come back to a little bit later on that. So I head on past that, and I'm giggling as I go past that. Well, you got to go over the mountains and everything to get into this valley on the other side of the hill there where this tractor was. Well, I went over there, and the exhaust had all come apart on it, and we got it all apart, and there's not very good cell phone service out there in that area. So I took off and headed back. I had to go back to the 6-liter powerstroke and on this other ranch, and I was trying to make it down to McDowell to the shop to get on the 50 Series Detroit to try to finish it. And it's just been one thing after another here lately, so I never even made it down there today. And decided, well, I'm getting sidetracked here. Anyways, I headed back the way I came, and there's a place up there called Argos. So it's top of D Hill. We used to, when I was a kid in high school, it used to be the place we'd come out of town there, and we'd all go up there to the top of this mountain. We'd party. It's right at the top. The county road goes right through it, and that's a good place for cell phone reception because it's at the top of the hill there. So I pulled over, and it's a real secluded area, and it's up in the woods and stuff. It's just there's never anybody around up there. So I pull over in this little cut out there on the county road, and I'm sitting there looking at my phone on JD Parts Catalog. Well, I had Eva and Daisy with me, and they started growling, and I kind of looked up over there to the pasture side, and here comes this kind of, no, I'm not going to beat around the bush. He looked like a real scummy guy. Here he comes walking out of the brush, and the problem with this area now, we got a lot of pot growers that have moved from the Bay Area up here, and a lot of meth labs everywhere. I mean, it's just it's nothing like it used to be when I was a kid, So you used to never see this kind of stuff, but it's everywhere now. And so I kind of reached over there back behind my dog, and let's just put it this way: I grabbed my old trusty sidekick and put it on my lap, and made sure it was ready to go. And the guy walks around the nose of the truck there, and he grabs the mirror with his left hand, the bar on the mirror, and then he goes to raise his left foot up. I had the window down, and I just kind of got right in his shit real quick. I said, "Don't climb up on this truck." And he stepped back down, and he says, "Yeah, man, my minivan's broke down in the woods in there, and the first thing in my head is, what the hell are you doing out here?" And he says, "I wonder if you can come down and jump me off." And the second thing that went through my mind is, no, after he got done telling me what he was wanting, I'm thinking he just looked like a real, just all I can say is a real dandy, and I thought, yeah, this dude's going to get down here and shoot me or stab me and kill my dogs and take my wallet or the truck. And so I just flat out told him, I said, well, before I even got a chance to tell him, he told me that he needed a jump. And he said, "I don't have any money." He said, "But I've got reefer. I'll trade for you. I'll trade you some reefer." So I started kind of giggling there, and he says, "You don't do reefer, huh?" And I said, "Well, I sure as hell don't work for it." I said, "I work for money. That's the kind of green I work for." And he kind of got a little bit shitty with me, and he said, "So you're not going to help me out?" And I said, "No." I said, "Maybe 10, 20 years ago if somebody needed help." And I said, "Never mind. 10, 20 years ago, I would have never seen some guy like you walking out of the brush like this. If it had been somebody like a timber faller or somebody that was out there working," I says, "I'd have helped you all day long." I says, "No, I'm not going to help you." And I just released the brakes and just took off. So anyways, I get back down the hill there, and I was only out at this ranch for 2 hours. So this just tells you, it's kind of funny to me because people have nothing better to do with their time than trivial, stupid shit like this. So I get back down the hill there, and where the stop sign fiasco took place, I go around there and I look at both signs, and the time that I had went out to this ranch, this guy had already went out there, speaking of people that have nothing better to do, had already went out there, and he had painted them red again, and he even took the time to take black stencil and stencil in stop, and I just shook my head going, wow, you gotta be kidding me. So anyways, I thought I had to tell you about that. So then I go out to this ranch, and this is the only second 6-liter Power Stroke that I've ever seen this happen to. I had one years ago that did it. It was actually an '04. No, it was an '03. This was an '04, late '04, because IPC is. You'll know the difference between an early '04 and a late '04. Early '04 was like an '03 kinda. The early '04s had the IPR and IPC sensor and the high pressure oil pump back in the valley on the back of the block. They were together just like the '03 were. You'll know a late '04 when you see the IPC sensor mounted on the right front part of the valve cover. You'll see the IPC sensor sticking out of it. It actually threads into the high pressure oil rail. They actually thought of something good there. Anyways, this particular pickup, what it was doing was you could start the pickup up, and it would run fine cold, and as soon as it got warmed up, it would now it only would do it under a pretty good load. You'd have to really push on it, and then it would just kind of start fading on you until eventually it would die under a pretty good load. And sitting there in the shop where I had it is where I looked at it. Initially, I went out there to look at this thing actually a few days before this all went down, and it had contribution codes. It had a bad exhaust back pressure sensor. It had EGR problems. This vehicle's got 300,000. It's 291,000 miles on it. And it's been on the ranch probably for a good, I don't know, 50,000 of them. It was on the highway for most of that time before, I think. But now it's just been out in the dirt, and it's got a hard life. So anyways, I was in a hurry, and I said, it had 2-cylinder contributions. It was missing really bad. And I got 2 injectors for it, exhaust back pressure sensor. I didn't get an EGR valve or anything like that, because sometimes if you get exhaust back pressure sensor codes, the EGR won't act properly until you get your exhaust back pressure sensor working properly anyways. So I went out there with the exhaust back pressure sensor and 2 injectors, and I fired it up and I ran it, and I wanted to make sure that I was on the right track, because I knew that when I made the call the other day, I was in a hurry to get to another call, and I just didn't want to jump the gun and change 2 injectors for nothing. So I started it up. Well, I changed the exhaust back pressure sensor first. I knew that was a problem, and put it in the live data, and all that read correctly. So I moved on to the injector problem. So I sat in it and I ran it real hard for, I don't know, probably a good, till it got up to operating temperature. And I held it at about 3,000 RPM, and I kept noticing that I had to keep giving it more and more, push down the throttle pedal more and more to keep my RPMs at 3,000 RPM. And it took me a little while, because the last one that did this to me was like probably 5 years ago, so it had to jar my brain a little bit. So what it did is pretty soon I had it to the floor, and I couldn't maintain RPM, and then it just kept fading and fading and fading until it died. And what you want to do, by the time that I figured out what was going on, I knew what was happening. And so what you want to do when this all goes down is, when it does die, don't leave the key on. Shut the key off immediately. And then get out of the truck, walk around, pull the fuel filter cap off underneath the hood. If it's empty, here's what you need to do, okay? If it's completely empty or close to being empty, what's happening there is you've got an injector that is either going back through the nozzle, or it's going around the O-ring and going back into the fuel side of the injector where it comes in through the cylinder head. You'll see the holes up there with the screens on them. And what happens, that compression gas is coming back up through there, and it's shoving all the fuel out of that injector back through the cylinder head, back through the filter, back to return in the tank. So the first one that ever did it took me a little bit to figure out what was going on. But if you leave that key on, it'll give you kind of you'll be scratching your ass for a while, trying to figure out what's going on, because that filter head will be full of fuel. And what'll kind of fool you is it'll throw a cylinder 1 contribution code, but it's actually going to be cylinder 3 that's giving you the problem, not cylinder 1. So cylinder 3 is actually the one causing the problem, and it's aerating the fuel, throwing the misfire code for cylinder number 1. So it'll kind of fool you. But well, the way you can look at that and test it is get that filter bowl full of fuel, turn the key back on after you check that it's empty, and you know kind of what's going on when you've seen this before. Ford has a bubble test, but I just do it a little bit different. You can see if it's throwing a contribution code on number 1, then it's obviously going to be on the passenger side bank. So automatically what I do is I just fill the filter full of fuel with the lift pump, turn the key on just for a little bit, fill it up, and then I leave the key off. I take the start wire off the fender well, then I just stick it on the battery post. And you'll see, with the engine nice and hot, you'll see the bubbles coming back through the return, or not the return, but the supply coming from the filter head to the cylinder head, and you'll see the compression gas coming back into that fuel, into the filter head. And if it's throwing a contribution code on number 1, it's generally going to be number 3, and if it's 3, it's going to be 5. Anyways, another way you can check that is start pulling the glow plugs one at a time. Pull the glow plugs one at a time until the bubbles stop coming back into the filter. You're taking the compression away from that cylinder. That's another way. This one, I just changed number 1 and number 3 injector. And I probably could have got away with just changing number 3 and been just fine. But anyways, I wanted to go over that with you. I thought some of you guys would be interested in if you guys have ever run into that certain scenario on a 6-liter Power Stroke, and it works for ISXs too. ISX Cummins kind of do that. I think that Roz, he's got a video on one of those, and I've done that same exact thing that he shows on his video about how you check for the compression gas coming back through the fuel back into like an IFSM on the that'd be the integrated fuel system module, I think is what that acronym stands for on an ISX. But you can check it with some of that clear plastic line on those. But anyways, I thought maybe that would help you guys out, a little bit of story time as well in that. So I'm tearing apart this. I'm gonna have to take the cylinder head in and either have it fixed or get another head. The block is absolutely destroyed. You'll see here shortly. But I'm losing my daylight here, and it's getting cold, and I wanted to get this cylinder head off of here and show you guys what was going on in this video. And then tomorrow this is late in the evening, I'm gonna go ahead and get the crank out of it and everything. And I know there was a guy, and I might actually mention this later in the video. I know there was a guy on the first video I did on this. It was like a short 5-minute video. He had mentioned to me that he had a block for me. Hopefully he's watching this again. Comment again, please, and let me know, and I'll exchange emails or whatever, and we'll hook up and try to get a block, because I do need a CR common rail block. This is an 04. Anyways.
So me and my significant other and my daughter, we actually just grabbed this head and just pulled it off and laid it here edge. Wise, but looky there. Okay, so we got a valve. They're gone. Let's pull this off of here. There, we'll get a little better look at her now. That head can be fixed. Yes, it can. I will send it down there, and they will weld that up and resurface it, and it'll be fine. They'll cut the valve seats in it, or the valve recesses for the valve seats, and it'll be fine. But this cannot be fixed. Looky inside there, huh? Didn't that look really nice? Oh, you know what happened? The piston came apart. Look at this one over here. Something was going on with this one too, though. Huh. something was going on with number 6 as well. See all the metal embedded? Let's look at the valves on number 6. That would be this end down here. Something got in number 6 here and kind of beat her up a little bit there. So what? It must have dropped a valve. It dropped a valve is what it did. The valve stem is broke. So I was thinking that the rod actually broke. Let me see if I can get my light adjusted. Look at that. That's why the water was in the oil, obviously. There's not a lot we can do for this poor old engine block right here. I don't even see, there's not really much of anything left of the piston. Wow. Doesn't look so good. I'm pretty sure the crank's probably going to be just fine in it. Yeah, I mean, I bet the crank is probably just fine in it. And I bet the cam's just fine in it too. There's probably nothing wrong with that cam. Why did that happen? I mean, the wrist pin is still in the rod end. I mean, the rod's bent a little bit. The rod is bent, but why? Man, that piston just disintegrated. Why would that just blow up and disintegrate all of a sudden like that? I mean, who knows? I don't know the history of this vehicle, but man, what a bunch of chaos, huh? There's chunks of piston material there. And did that valve drop and break that stem for some reason? I just have a hard time believing that. I'm not sure what happened on this one. I mean, there was something going on with number 6 as well. There's a bunch of material embedded in that. Did all that stuff somehow wind up through the intake manifold and get into number 6 too? I'm trying to think this through here. If it went back up into the valve, well, it could have wound up in the intake and got sucked in through another intake valve come open, and I mean, the piston should have been on the downstroke on the intake stroke, unless the hole was open already, and then the piston came back up and shot shit back through it, and then shot it all back up in the intake manifold, and stuff went through here too. But why just on number 6? But there's shit everywhere, all in it. Look at it. There's fragments of shit everywhere in it. I mean, this thing really just kind of ate itself, man. Just kind of disintegrated. Yeah, look at that block, though. It absolutely destroyed that engine block. Wow. That's crazy. These things, these 5.9s are usually pretty damn bulletproof, but obviously this one wasn't bulletproof enough for this individual. And I talked to him. There's never been a power programmer. It's bone stock. Bone stock. And I'm trying to wake the camera up and see if you guys are making sure you're getting a good view of the carnage here. That's a nice one, ain't it? Well, that'll be it for this video. Not going to be much of a video, but the head can be fixed. We'll send it off Diesel Cast West in Portland and have them fix it. And it'll be way cheaper than buying another head. And they're really good, really damn good. I'm really impressed with what they do so far. Hey, if the guy that messaged me, I'll say it again. There was a guy that commented on when I made the original video about this thing being blown up. I need a block. We'll make this thing run. I'll get a block. I'll pull that crank out. I'll get a new rod right now New rod, we'll look at the cam lifters. I'm sure they're going to be fine. I'm sure the crank's fine. We'll really check it out. We're not going to make a huge rash decision yet, but I mean, I'm pretty certain, because I was turning the engine over to get the converter bolts out, and it turned over really nice and free, and I'm pretty certain it's going to be fine. So right now I'm thinking number 4 rod and main bearings, another engine block, of course. Get the head fixed, 1 injector. What else? Yeah. I mean, we'll get the other block and we'll do it right. We'll check the bores and make sure everything's going to be right. We'll mic them all out. Check cylinder taper, all that kind of good stuff, and make sure it's going to last another 200,000, 250,000 miles. It should last a lot longer than that, to be honest with you. But anyways, I'll be back with you when I'm disassembling the rest of this garbage.